Hey, I'm Summer.
And I'm Mike.
And we got married.
With children.
We're married 2 years now.
Blended for 11.
Like a margarita.
Yeah, baby, like a margarita.
And you're listening to the Everything Always podcast.
Want to tell them why we do this?
We do this because blending families isn't easy. There's step-parenting, co-parenting, his ex,
Her ex.
schedules, sibling rivalry,
Money issues.
custody issues.
Dating and relationship issues.
It's a whole lot of stuff.
Blended with a whole lot of good stuff.
And we're here to talk about all of it because we've done most of it.
We might not be experts, but we've learned a lot.
And we're still learning, and we want to share that with you.
Thanks for joining. Now let's go.
Hey guys, today it is another summer solo episode. We really wanted to do this one together, but we had such conflicts with our schedules and actually getting to sit down and record. And we do have some other good episodes that we have scheduled, but this one was just tough with me traveling a lot and just a lot going on. And so it was a really important topic though that we had both discussed. And I wanted to make sure that we put this out. And when we talked last week, on our live and on the podcast about our rules, our family rules, the big question that kept coming out was, what about kids and technology? And people have written in to express their opinions. And so we wanted to share ours. So in this case, it's going to be me sharing ours. And I will tell you that Mike and I have had our concerns when it comes to technology. And I think it is probably the same big concerns that most parents have. And I feel like most of those things are, one, is it making my child less active because they're just sitting and staring at a screen? Is it going to cause a weight problem? Is it going to cause a health problem because they're not outside playing like we did when we were growing up? And even, our generation growing up, TV was the big thing. It was like, oh my gosh, kids are just sitting, staring at TVs, and video games were out. I mean, there was Atari and Nintendo. And I'm talking, of course, about our age when we were growing up, and we're in our 40s now, early 40s. We did go out and play a lot. I mean, I used to go out and ride my bike all the time. I was in activities and sports, and my parents actually did not allow video games, especially my dad. He was anti-video games because he was like, you should be out playing. And I did watch TV, but I was not one of those, sit all day on a Sunday, watch TV, watch movies. We were pretty active, but I did have friends that were sitting and watching TV all day long. They were still in sports and involved in all that, but they had video games at their house, and they had brothers and siblings that they were playing video games with and watching TV all the time. And I actually didn't love it so much. And I see our kids now with their own devices. I mean, it started with little handheld video games, and it was iPads, and it became phones. And there is just every single thing almost that you can do on that device. And so the fear is, are you just going to sit there and watch it? And we've been there. We've seen it with our kids where we're just like, you are so plugged in and it's a chill day. We've got lots to do. And you see your child just sitting there with headphones on, watching YouTube videos or playing a game or whatever it is. And you're just kind of like, come on, let's get out. And you're the one that has to like push them to get out because left to their own quote unquote devices, it just seems so easy for them to just sit there. So that's one of the fears. Another big fear is worrying about how it affects their relationships with their parents, with their siblings, with their family and friends, because they're plugged in all the time. And that's a big thing that I've heard a lot just with friends, that worry. And then that kind of leads into another really big worry is social skills. Are you able to communicate with other people because you're constantly texting, maybe FaceTiming, but what happened to, just sitting and looking into each other's eyes and having conversations like that? There's so much less of that. So technology becomes a big concern. And then, of course, social media. Social media is huge. I mean, that is such a huge one. And I think that alone deserves its own topic that I really want Mike to be a part of when we talk about that. So we will definitely schedule that because we've talked a lot about it. And I think it will be interesting for you to hear the different sides, mom version and dad version. That whole thing with your kids not being active, like how do you prevent that? It's hard. I get it. I think there's some parents that probably do that whole judgment thing of, you know what? I would never let my child be on an iPad, and this might be coming from a new parent. And then the next thing you see them 3 years later and already their child's got a device and they're like, well, we just want to have a nice dinner and it keeps her quiet. So we're just going to let her have it. And I think you think of all of these things that you're going to do differently. And I mean, the truth of the matter is, they do help keep your kids quiet, especially when they're like toddlers or wanting to run around, or they're 5, 6, 7, and they get bored and they don't want to sit there while you're having a conversation with another adult or whatever it is. Like, it does keep them occupied. And you're like, you know what? What's the harm? They're playing a good game, and it's good for their brain to figure out these puzzles. Who cares if it's on a screen and all of that? But then what happens is you start to go, okay, they are becoming more dependent. That 1 hour dinner then turns into 2 hours that day, then turns into 3 hours. It just turns into more and more. And hey, we know on long road trips how wonderful it is to equip your child with a device where they can watch videos, they can play games, and you're just kind of like, oh, this is chill, this is quiet, instead of hearing arguing or complaining or are we there yet? All that stuff. So we get it. We know that you get it. And we know that sometimes it is hard to pull those devices away. It's also hard as they get older and they're teenagers and you're like, you know what? We're not in the same room all the time. When they're little, you know where they're at, you know what they're doing. And as they get older, they're in their room or they're doing different things because they're starting to have that whole independence. They're not dependent on you. They're going to be okay. They're not going to fall down the stairs anymore, hopefully. It's like you're in control, but you're not in control. You don't know what's happening at school. They have devices at school. They're on them during lunch. And it's definitely a tricky thing. And you wonder, like, should my child even have a device? And I will say this, for us, our kids probably had them younger than some parents. Actually, they weren't we had friends that had their kids had devices earlier than our kids, but it became a really nice thing because especially when you're sharing custody and in a blended family, it's really nice to be able to, with technology today, get to FaceTime with your kids when they're at their other parent's house. And I know my kids like to do that with their dad when they're at our house, and they've got siblings at their dad's house that they like to FaceTime with and sometimes say goodnight to. And it's nice, even if you're traveling, to be able to talk to them and to be able to have that direct access to them. And it has made life easier in a lot of ways. I will say that. In terms of being active, that's just something as a family to put a rule on. I mean, honestly, it's, hey, for us, are these things done? Have you done your activities? Have you done your homework? Have you done the things that you're responsible to do? Then, yeah, you can have this time on your device. And then the question is, well, what are they doing on that device? The way that Mike and I have always seen it is that we are the parents and we pay for those devices. And until the day that they are paying for their own devices and, service, we are going to be in control of those devices. We are allowed to look at those phones and do a check whenever we want. Something that my kid's father and I had done right when they got phones, and as soon as it was available, was get the apps that you can actually have control over their phone. So you can see what's going on. You can see the text messages and conversations going back and forth. And you can see, how much time they're spending on games, on videos. And you're also able to control what it is that they're able to access via the internet, because obviously there's lots of inappropriate things. We're also able to see, once they were old enough to have certain social media accounts, we were able to see what it was that they were doing and monitor and make sure that there's no secret accounts going on, that they are private accounts, and that they're being appropriate. We also had the talks, Mike and I and other parents, we had talks with the kids about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And if there was something that was happening that wasn't appropriate, we had to talk about it. And you have to keep a watch on it, because all the kids have different personalities. There's one that's going to try to get away with more than the other. There's one that's going to be scared about what might go wrong. And so they're definitely following the rules that parents have set in place when it comes to social media. But I think that as things have become easier in terms of, hey, there's this quick access, we're able to get a hold of them, we're able to track them, they're able to do things on their phones. That's pretty cool. They're able to, do this on an app, that on an app. We're able to do that. Like technology has definitely facilitated a lot of things in life and has really made things easier. At the same time, it makes it more challenging as a parent. So while your kid might be sitting there looking at a phone and you're not worried if they're going to crash their bike or worried about if they've got their helmet on or if they're going to make it back home in time, whatever, you're worried now about what they're filling their brains with. And so there's that. And I think that the earlier you can have those conversations, tell them, maybe even forewarn them about the things they're going to see. Because as much as we monitor, there's still stuff that they're going to see. I mean, our kids like to do TikToks, and sometimes there's stuff on there that is like just not appropriate. And you start to realize at a certain age, they're going to start to see this stuff. It's what's happening. They're going to start hearing things at school. It's what's happening. So instead of it being this big shock to them or, bringing them down the wrong path, what if you just have the conversation about it and start to explain to them, what do you think is appropriate? And here's what we see. If you're going to make this choice, here's the path that you could go down by making that choice.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to our podcast.
Yes, we appreciate you so much, and we hope you know that we support you in whatever stage you're at.
We took a leap here, sharing our mistakes and wins with you.
Yeah, we're getting pretty vulnerable here, but we know that we've learned from those who have been brave enough to share with us, and we want to do that with you.
Hey, can you do us a favor? If you like what you hear, will you press pause and rate the podcast and write a review?
Oh, and while you're at it, share it, please.
And if you have questions, you can find us on all of our social channels.
Okay, ready to get back to it?
Let's do it.
Are they developing the right kind of relationships? And that is a huge, tough one, because I've definitely witnessed with our kids what social media, what texting and miscommunication via text can do to a relationship when you're not actually talking on the phone or talking face to face. In a sense, we've seen, there's a little bit more courage that comes behind the text and sending a text. And then when you see that person face to face, it's interesting how that confidence that they seem to have had sending that text message that could have been cruel or just totally inappropriate goes away. And it's like, oh, so behind the screen, there's a lot more confidence, which is where a lot of bullying is coming in. And it's sad. It's really, really sad. I mean, honestly, each thing that I'm talking about could be a whole entire discussion, but I just wanted to address it and go over some of the things that we've seen and that we've dealt with. And we have dealt with social media madness when our kids first started social media. And, we had specific incidents that were heartbreaking and awful. At the end of the day, it was turned into a really good lesson. And it was also a wake-up call to really be aware for some of the other kids that were going to come into social media in our family. It was huge. Kids can almost grow up a little bit sooner than we want, be aware of things sooner than we want. Whether we put strict rules on what they're doing or not, they're still hearing and seeing things because their friends have devices. And so there's that question of, hey, do I want to be the first one that they're hearing this from, or do we want it to be their friends? And I think there's that fine line of really being protective of what it is that they see, and also not being too protective because they are going to see it, and having the conversation ahead of time. I'm hoping that makes sense. And I think it's something that we feel good about within our family. You don't know what's perfect. You don't know exactly the right thing to do for different personalities, but we do what we believe and we feel is right. I think the biggest thing is having open communication about it. If you follow us, you know that we do have that downtime. So there are the rules of when you get to use it. There is the rule of you have to put that device away at 9:00, especially during school nights. There's a little bit more flexibility on weekends, but during the school year, during school and important things, maybe it's in a game that's really early in the morning, that device goes away at 9:00. It gets plugged into the kitchen and you can check it in the morning once you're ready to start your day and you've done the things that you need to do. And our goal with that really is so that they have that disconnection time and they don't go to bed at 9:00. So now they've got this hour, sometimes hour and a half. They're older, so they go to bed later, to connect with each other, and they'll play games, or they'll, go, now's the time I'm going to get my laundry done or do some other things that I need to do to be ready for the day. And it's awesome because I think it gives you a sense of them being in control of their time and not being controlled by that device or falling asleep to it or doing any of that kind of stuff that we don't feel is very healthy. Like dinner, for example, put the devices away. We're having dinner. Let's look at each other. Let's have a conversation. It's funny that you have to actually enforce that these days because it's so tempting. I mean, we've seen it so many times at restaurants. You see this whole entire family sitting and everyone's on a device. And hey, we've been there. We know there's times that happens. You're on a road trip, you're super tired, and everyone's just kind of like, let's just connect to our device and not have to talk to each other. I mean, that's happened. But for the most part, we have that, hey, we're having dinner, no devices at the table. Let's just talk to each other. I think these are pretty basic things. I'm going to guess that a lot of families think about this. I think the main thing is, do you actually commit to that? Do you have the conversations around social media, and do you make sure that you abide to that no screen time? Have the conversations with your kids about technology. There's a lot of really great things. I'm a huge fan of technology. I also will get frustrated by it if it doesn't work fast enough because I'm spoiled. I'll get frustrated by it when I think it's making things too easy sometimes for us. And at the same time, I so appreciate it because I know that I wouldn't be where I'm at in terms of business, even in terms of self-growth, in terms of knowledge and education, if it weren't for these devices. Because I think social media and technology have made it a lot easier to gain access to really good information and things that can save you a lot of time. It can make you achieve goals in a faster way. It's something that can help keep you accountable. It actually helps keep you connected to family and friends. I know that because of social media, I'm probably staying more connected to family and friends and what's going on in their lives, and actually being able to be supportive and receive support because of this online world. And at the same time, we can also become too reliant on that and isolate ourselves and not have that human, in-person connection, which I think is so important as well. And then there's also disconnecting from all of it and just being out in nature and not being connected to anything. That is super refreshing. So there's a balance, and my whole theory, if you've heard me on other podcasts and lives, is that, balance doesn't mean equal amount of time to each thing. It's really about what you feel you need at that time, what's taking priority. And sometimes you are connected to your device all day because you're working on a project and you need to be connected with all of these different people, or you've got something going on in your life that you need to be connected. And then there's times where you cannot look at your phone, you cannot get on your computer, you don't even want to watch TV, you just need to decompress, be outdoors, meditate, whatever it is, and just escape from all of that stimulation. And I think that both are really, really important. And on a day-to-day basis, sometimes you might be disconnected longer than another, but it's just being in tune with yourself and seeing and knowing what you need. And I think that if you are in communication with your kids and you're in tune with them, you're going to start to see that and you'll recognize that, like, gosh, my son's been on that freaking device all day long. Let's go out and do something. And I've done that. We've had like whole mornings where like, you guys are just sitting on the couch. You're all next to each other. Nobody's talking to each other. And you're all just watching YouTube, playing a game, Minecrafting, whatever it is. Let's put those away and let's go on a hike, or let's do something. There's the balance. That's it. And balance is different for everyone. I had another point that I was going to make. And this is what it was. I think that there's that other line too. I love that my kids know how to use technology because I know that it's going to be such an important part of their later life. It's going to be so important in terms of the work that they do. So with that being said, think about the type of technology and the type of things that they are doing with these devices. And when they get on the computer, are they just watching YouTube, or are they actually doing something that's a bit more interactive for school? Are they developing PowerPoints? Are they creating Excel spreadsheets? Whatever, just something that keeps their brain engaged and active I happen to think that that's a really good thing. I love learning new things. I love learning new software programs and things that will help my business. I love seeing what other people come up with in terms of technology. It fascinates me. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. And I think it's really about what is it that they're watching and what is it that they're interacting with. If they're interacting with, a violent video game all the time, then I think that maybe you might need to be concerned or look at different behaviors. Is there too much of that going on? Are they just isolating themselves in a dark room just to play something that's very dark, and violent? Or are they watching, that my son is like super into survival stories? I don't feel that that's a bad thing. Hey, if this is your hour or your time to watch something, I think it's kind of cool to watch how, people get out in the wilderness and how they survive. That's cool stuff. And I appreciate the people that are putting out that content, the people that are making those types of shows, or the people that are making YouTube videos and things that are DIY or creative and teaching people how to do stuff. I mean, it's really another way for our kids and ourselves to learn. I learn a ton from YouTube videos, from Instagram stories, from people doing something on IGTV and sharing, questions and answers, or just checking in to talk, doing lives, doing podcasts. All of that we get because of the technology that's available to us. So it's really just keeping in mind how it's being used, and maybe, not being so quick to judge other parents. And that's the next podcast that we're doing is, worrying about other parents' judgment and what they think. That's a big topic that I want to dive into, because I don't like seeing people get judged for what they're doing. And often we do that, that kid's on that device all the time, or that kid's this. Well, you know what? You're not with them every day. Maybe today was a day that they were going to be all plugged in because for the last 3 days they did a long backpacking trip with their friends, or they had a tournament that they were in. Who knows? Maybe we should think about, not being so quick to judge, because I'm sure there's things that we've done that you worry about what other people are thinking. And you say, you know what? You don't know where we've been the last 3 days. So I just wanted to throw that in there too. Technology, it's a big thing. It's your business with your family, how you're going to manage it. And I hope that a little bit of what I shared was helpful and offers something in the way that you manage it in your home. And above all, it's really about communication, guiding them on the right path and how they use it and how they take advantage of it. Just being safe and remembering that you are the parent, you are in control, and you have every right to talk about and to make rules on what it is that they are doing with that, because pretty sure you are the ones that made it available to them. You're the ones paying for it. And so I think that you have the say, and that should be something that should be respected by the children. It's a good responsibility for them to have. I hope that was helpful. Thank you guys for listening, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. Our goal is to bring you all kinds of value that will help you navigate these challenging waters of blending a family.
Reach out to us if there's something specific you want to hear.
And don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast.
And if you really like it, share it with someone you love.
Ooh, and be bold enough to share it with someone you don't.